Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at the two newest Viseart Petite 4 and the new YSL Loveshine lipsticks. And let's go ahead and get started. Let's start off with the Viseart Petite 4 quads. And we have two of these. We have Hesperides, and these were gifted to me. Thank you so much to Viseart. And then Isolde. So this one here is Hesperides. And you can see these are great everyday kind of shades. And actually, I have to say, I really like a lot of them for one and done kind of shades. And this one's Isolde here. So you can see that they are pretty similar. We do have pretty close color stories. However, Isolde is definitely going to be a little bit warmer than Hesperides. So let's swatch these and then we'll move on to the eye demos. So we're going to start off with Hesperides here. And we start off with this matte shade here that is a gorgeous, more brownish taupe, and it's just a really great one and done. Then we have this pink shade here, which has a little bit of a duochrome finish there. You've got kind of peach, a little bit of pale pink shimmer in there, and it's firmly pressed in the pan. It's not going to be a loose shimmer. This next shade here, which is going to be like a taupe with like silver shimmer, this one is a little bit looser than the pink shade. And then we have a matte here, and this is going to be, I see, I've got a little staining stuck on my arm, but this is going to be a brown with a touch of mauve in there. So it's going to be one of those rosy browns. So this is Hesperides. This is the cooler of the two palettes. Now for Isolde, we're going to start off with a sparkly shimmery shade. I love this shade. You can dab this one on with a brush to use it more like a topper with Starlight. But you can see this is going to be a warm rosy champagne shimmer. And this shimmery shade here is a little bit softer than those in the Hesperides palette. Next up, we have a satin. And this is going to be a medium tone warm brown satin. Really pretty on the eyes, and I think it goes nicely with the other shades in here. Next up, we have a light matte shade here, and this is going to be a taupe. You can see the Hesperides one is going to be a bit more mauvey, whereas this one has a little bit more warmth to it. And then our last shade here is going to be this beautiful rosy shimmer here. So overall, the two palettes, I do feel like they are pretty similar, but we have this warm brown satin here that kind of makes this one skew a bit warmer, whereas we've got a bit more tones of pink in here that makes this a little bit cooler. This is definitely going to be a warm toned shade here, the second one, but overall, the palette skews a bit cooler and this one skews a bit warmer. Now, on my eyes right now, I actually have one of each, and I'll show you those in the demo right now, and you can see how similar they are on the eyes. Let's look at the eye swatches. Now, just a few details about these eyeshadows. They do come in this small magnetic closure kind of packaging here, and it comes with a little plastic tray. I recommend keeping that to kind of minimize any of the powder dust that can get out and make things a little bit messy because it's not fully enclosed on the sides. These are some of my favorite travel palettes. I love the Petite 4 from Viseart for traveling in particular. And anytime I do go somewhere, I definitely always bring at least one of these with me because you've got, really compact size. You've got, 4 shades, different finishes, and you can mix and match the shades in your palettes. So if you've got a palette and you kind of just want to take like 2 from this one and 2 from this one, it's really easy to do. These are magnetic and you just pull them up. There's a little lip. So really easy. I love these. They have a 3-year shelf life, and these are made in the US. And we have 4 shades here that are 1.5 grams each. So these are interchangeable with like the Étendue palettes and so forth from Viseart. So everything except like the Petite Pro essentially is now in this 1.5 gram size. So you can interchange these pretty easily with most Viseart products. Now, looking at the two palettes, When you look at the colors individually on the eye, you can definitely see differences between the palettes. And as you're looking at the eye swatches for Hesperides versus Isolde, you can see Hesperides definitely leans a bit cooler, whereas Isolde leans a little bit more, it's more neutral. It's not really a warm palette per se. These are both pretty neutral, but the Hesperides definitely leans cooler. So they are pretty close, but these are like perfect daily palettes. And when I first saw them, I was like, oh, these are so close. You probably don't need to. And I would have to say, I still think that is accurate. You don't necessarily need to. But what I really love about these palettes is the fact that these are like your perfect everyday, don't want to think about color, like neutral palettes. And you've got one that leans a little cooler and one that leans a little warmer. So, there's a palette for everybody here. Now, these are really soft, sheer kind of colors. They're light. They're not going to be strongly pigmented. These are going to be your lighter neutral looks. And I think they are gorgeous. The mattes from Viseart are some of my favorite. They are a powdery matte that performs well, blends out well, and really lasts throughout the day without creasing. Now, the shimmers, I love Viseart shimmers in general as well. But I would have to say that those in the Isolde palette, they're a little bit softer than the ones in Hesperides. And I tend to prefer that softer formula versus the more firmly pressed ones. The more firmly pressed ones, they're easy to use for like scattered starlight kind of effects. You can use them actually with a finger or a brush, but I actually prefer the brush application with those. I feel like I was able to pick up a bit more with the brush with the Hesperides shimmers than I did with my finger. And, I think they're both great. They're just kind of like different purposes. You're going to get a more saturated shimmer with those in the Isolde palette versus the Hesperides palette. So it just kind of depends what you're looking for. If you're not really into shimmer, the Hesperides ones are probably a better fit for you. But I have to say, the other thing that I really like about the Isolde palette is the inclusion of a satin. I love satin shades, and I think this is a great one. So overall, I think both palettes have some really beautiful one-and-done shades, but I do have some favorite shades in there, and it's hard to pick a palette because I love that first shade in Hesperides so much as a one-and-done. I also love the third shade, so the two on the left, those are my favorite in that palette. And then for Isolde, I love that kind of matte taupe, and I love the shimmers in there. I also really love that satin, but I would love to see one a little bit cooler personally for me. That would have been great if they had a cooler tone version of that in the Hesperides. So overall, I think both palettes are great. They are fairly similar to each other. So I think it really depends what your undertones are. If your undertones skew a little bit cooler, I would opt for Hesperides. And if you tend to prefer a little bit more warmth or, sticking pretty much straight on the neutral part of the spectrum, then I would go with Isolde. Overall, the quality in both of the palettes is great. And although I do prefer the softer shimmer formula in the Isolde, the shimmer formula in the Hesperides, there's nothing wrong with it. It's still a good shimmer formula. It's just a little bit more firmly pressed, which is going to be great for those of you who don't want sparkle everywhere. You want to be a bit more targeted with it. And I think it works really well with a small, like more of a thin shader style brush, something like the Rephr 28. It picks up really well with something like that. So I think it's, that's great for a more targeted shimmer application. So I have to say, I really like both of them. I'm not really sure which one is my favorite. So I know, like, kind of listening to myself talk, it sounds like Isolde is, but I'm really hesitant to say that because I really love the shades in the Hesperides as well. And I do think that they suit my coloring very well. So yeah, let me know which one your favorite is. And let me know, can you tell a difference between my eyes from a distance? Because I feel like up close, you can see a difference, but from a little bit further back, people aren't really going to tell that I have two different eyeshadows on. So I thought that was kind of helpful just to see how close they actually are on the eyes. So let's go ahead and take a look at just a couple of quick comparisons. So these shades are nothing revolutionary. We've seen them before. You probably have some of these in your collection, if not all of them, but a couple of Viseart palettes really came to mind right away when I saw these. And this one here is the Cashmere Charmeuse. And here's Hesperides with it. So you can see we definitely have some shades that look similar. And here's Isolde with it. So I'm just going to swatch a few of these shades kind of with it. So let's start with these two mattes here. And we'll put these kind of right down here so we can see. You can see how similar, they're different. This is like a lighter version of the first shade in Hesperides. This one here is going to be a bit deeper and rosier. It's most similar to this, but it's actually going to be more brown than the one in Hesperides. Let's take a look at this matte here on the bottom. And you know what? Let's just go ahead with the one next to it as well. So we've got kind of this deep mauvey rose and more of a brown. Those don't really go. Those are definitely going to be a bit deeper and the tones aren't quite right. And then let's take a look at this pink shimmer, the first shade in this palette here. And I wanted to see how, we'll put this one right here, see how that compares. You can see this is going to be more pink than any of the ones here in the new quads. It's definitely cooler than that in Hesperides, and it's more pink than the ones in Isolde. Now, this is the original Cashmere. Here is Hesperides, and this Hesperides actually looks a little bit more similar to Cashmere than the Isolde does. You can see the Isolde tends to look a little bit warmer, but let's take a look at some that look similar. So we're going to start off with these first two shades here. And let's put them, we're going to put them right up here at the top near Hesperides. And you can see that those shades are not going to really match up. The pink here is going to be cooler, and that is going to be more like of a champagne-y taupe. And then this shade down here at the bottom, this looks almost the same as the third shade here in the pan. But you can see that the one in Cashmere has a lot more gray. It's a lot deeper and more pigmented. So those are kind of the closest shades from the Cashmere palette. And then the other one that I thought of was the Paris Edit. So this is Paris Edit. Here's Isolde. You can see Isolde looks a little bit warmer. And then here's Hesperides. Now, the Edit palettes, these are 1 gram shadows. So these ones are not interchangeable. They are going to be a bit, a bit smaller here. So these two here look to be the closest. So let's take a look at those. And, I'm going to put them over here on this side. And you can see those are definitely going to be peachier than anything we have in these two palettes. And then we have this light pink, and then this is going to be a satin brown. So let's see how this satin brown compares to that in the Isolde. You can see this is going to be more coppery. And here is the pink, but that is going to be lighter and cooler. So I hope this was helpful. Let's go ahead and move on to the YSL Lip Shines. So YSL has updated the Rouge Volupté Shine lipsticks, and they are now called the YSL Loveshine Lip Oil Sticks. So this is the new packaging. We have silver instead of gold, and you can see that our little YSL Cassandra logo is going to be going horizontally on here. And this is the new lipstick. So I have to say, I think they are not that different. I did notice one particular difference in the texture. We'll talk about those in just a minute when we go over the lip swatches, but let's first start off with swatching the shades that I picked up. Now, in the new range, we do have some repeat shades. This one here is number 44. This is definitely a repeat shade. I have this in the original formula as well, so we'll be taking a look at that. This is the, I never know how to say this properly, the Nude Lavalier or something like that. I can't remember. They do not put the names on the tubes now. They just have, I'm not even sure if that's going to focus because of the reflection, but they have the number. So they have like a little skew here, and then the number is all the way on the right. So just something to note there. So this one here is 44, and it is a shade that we had in the previous line as well. There are some new shades and some old shades. This one here is 201. And you can see that this is going to be a soft, more of a peachy coral nude. And I'm leaving some space here just so that when we are swatching some of the shades I had in the old ones, you know, we've got plenty of room there. And this one is the one that's on my lips. This is my favorite of the ones I picked up. This is number 203. And you can see that this is going to be more of a soft sheer mauve. So we've got a little bit of purple in there, a really beautiful color. And then last up, we have 205. So this one here is 205, and this one is going to be a bit more brown. There's a little bit of red in here, a little bit of a pinkish red. And these are the four I picked up. I have to say I'm really happy with the colors. They are pretty sheer and light. You can build them up, but this is like as deep as I can get the 203 on my lips. So let's move on to lip swatches and talk a bit about the formula. So just like the previous version, we do have a click closure on here. We have a 2-year shelf life. They're made in France, and we have 3.2 grams of product. They retail for $45 US, and currently there are 20 shades available. These are currently available at YSL directly and at Sephora. I have not seen them yet at other retailers, but that will be coming. This is a new permanent line. According to YSL, these offer the color of a lipstick and the slip of an oil. It says the iconic oil lipstick now enhanced with 6 nourishing oils and a sleek silver look. YSL Loveshine lip oil stick adds up to 24-hour hydration and protection. The formula, with 60% oil base and fig pulp, melts on lips for instant hydration and softer, moisturized lips over time. There are no parabens or phthalates in the formula. And, you know, the big thing that I noticed about these is, you know, they feel almost exactly the same as the previous version. We still have that fruity fragrance that we had in the previous version, but these do feel a bit more nourishing on the lips. They do not last a very long time. They will wear off, you know, I'd say 2 to 3 hours, and then I feel like reapplying. I do not feel like my lips are moisturized for 24 hours or any of that, but when I have the product on my lips, if you rub your lips together with the old formula, you could really feel that it's like an oily base. And, you know, sometimes when you have oil, you can feel like, you know, it feels very thin, right? And you can kind of feel like all the texture on your lips, or maybe texture in the pigments or whatever. So you kind of have that like thinner texture to it. This, while still very thin, lightweight on the lips with that oily texture, very, very similar. I would have to say when I rub my lips together, it actually feels smoother. It feels a little bit more buttery or silkier in that regard. So I do feel like it feels a little bit more hydrating while I have it on than it did previously. Now, the big change is the inclusion of fig. As I mentioned, fig pulp extract is in here. And I'd have to say, I think it was a nice addition. So for me, this lipstick kind of rebrand and upgrade and so forth, I think they actually did a nice job. So, you know, this is actually, in my opinion, slightly better than the previous version. But I do think that if you were just to like randomly pick one up, you wouldn't really notice a big difference. You might not notice any difference at all, actually. It's not really until you're like truly paying attention that you might notice a difference between the formulas. They're pretty close. So I do think this one feels just slightly more buttery, but it's still just as light and oily in texture on the lips as the previous version. So it's got to be the different oils that they're using in here. They just have like a little bit of a silkier texture, not quite as thin as before. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the older shades and how they compare. Now, first off, I want to note the old YSL Rouge Volupté Day Shines. This is the old packaging. You can see we've got gold, we've got our YSL going vertically, and they actually color coded the center portion depending on the shade. Right now, all of the 20 shades have this same light pink packaging. So I'm sure that's probably a way to cut costs. Everything's going to have the exact same color. So that's my guess as to why they did that. But I did actually like having it a little bit more color coded because I felt like it kind of helped, you know, differentiate in my drawer without having to look up the name or whatever. Now, just for reference, this is the shade 44 in the old formula. And let's build that up. You can see it gets a little bit darker than the new version. These have the exact same size and specs as the new ones. So we're still at 3.2 grams, 2-year shelf life. made in France. But you can see that the older version is just, this is actually a little bit more pink, whereas we have perhaps a touch more lavender in the new one. And the older one is slightly deeper. It can be built up a little bit deeper. So that's the only one I have that's a repeat, but I did want to share some other shades in case anybody has them. We have 153 here, and we're going to put this one right here. And you can see, again, it gets a lot deeper. Even with one layer, it's going to be a pretty pigmented shade, this one in particular. This is kind of like a warm raspberry, so almost strawberry red. And then this is 161. Build that one up, and this one is going to be a little bit more of a neutral brick red. And these ones here that I have, 161, now we're moving on to 162 and then 163. These were limited edition shades that came out for one of the summer collections. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. You can see this one here is a nice warm pink, and yeah, I don't really have a new shade that's similar to that, but this one is one that I really like a lot. Like I like to use that one a lot. And then the last one I have is a bit more of a shocking, you know, kind of, I wouldn't even say flamingo pink, but more neon. You can see there's a little bit of that neon vibe to it. And this is 163. Okay, so the old shades, we've got 44, 153, then we have 161, 162, 163. For the new shades, we have 44. So we've got 44 and 44. This is 201, 203, and 205. So I would have to say that the biggest difference between these two formulas would be, one, the new one in my mind feels a little bit more moisturizing, a little bit more smooth. Whereas the older shades, though, did have a little bit stronger pigmentation level. I cannot build these shades up really any more than they are. Now, that might just be the collection of colors that they started with. Perhaps we'll see brighter, more pigmented colors. Now, they do have some more pigmented shades available that I did not pick up, but I did think that these were going to be a little bit more pigmented than they actually are. That being said, I personally love this type of lipstick formula for summer. I like, you know, kind of that lighter sheer lip look as well. So I'm very happy with the 4 that I picked up. And yeah, you know, it's hard to pick a favorite, but 203 would be my number 1. From there, I guess I'd probably go 205, then 44, then 201 for my personal preferences. So let me know if you've tried these. I'd love to know your thoughts on these. I think they are a nice lipstick. If you liked the older version, I think you'll like this new version as well. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day.